So many scams. I have to change my username. Don't ever send me money. Imposters everywhere. Richard Hart bracket. Don't ever send me money. Imposters everywhere bracket. That's fucked up, right? And I'm out there actually making an effort trying to stop the fucking scams. Everyone else is like, fucking that Richard. Yeah, he's a scammer.
Call it a scam. Nobody really cares. We can tell you the only one that ain't prepared. Oh yes, I'ma be a millionaire. 5, a couple trillion shares. Oh no, I ain't getting wrecked again. Richard Hart, he got us set to win. We're a family, we all the best of friends. We ain't a cult, man, just call us Mexicans. ICOs, pump and dumps, they always try to take you. Buy low, sell high, I'm tired of your fake news. You need a token, you broken, you wanna see some massive gains? Lambo, new crib, model wife, cash and chains. Look no further at your final destination. Don't be complacent every day when you paper chasing. Choose the best, leave the rest. Stop investing like you press. The only crypto that you'll ever need is HEX. Call it a scam, nobody really cares. We can tell you the only one that ain't prepared. Oh yes, I'ma be a millionaire. 5, a couple trillion shares. Oh no, I ain't getting wrecked again. Richard Hart, he got us set to win. We're a family, we all the best of friends. We ain't a cult, man, just call us Mexicans. Your investments are safe, it's got defenses. A mutable contract that pays trustless interest. I don't understand why everybody is hating. HEX is capped at 3.69 inflation. Shares are like hash rate. The higher you take her, the more daily interest that gets paid to the stakers. Always do your own research, don't listen to me though. It's complete, it can't be changed. HEX is finito. Call it a scam, nobody really cares. We can tell you the only one that ain't prepared. Oh yes, I'ma be a millionaire. 5, a couple trillion shares. Oh no, I ain't getting wrecked again. Richard Hart, he got us set to win. We're a family, we all the best of friends. We ain't a cult, man, just call us Mexicans. The game has changed, ain't no going back now. Dummies that called HEX a scam can back down. I hope you understand, I pray that you follow me. You owe the entire HEX family an apology. And stay sober, cash out, the game's over. HEX is here for the market cap takeover. Buckle up, we about to be full throttle. With multiple audits is where we get paid to hodl. We got the game smothered, sisters and brothers, with no expectation of the work from others. It's complicated, I know that there's a lot to this. For your daily HEX updates, tune to Hexologists.
What's up, guys?
HEX is like nothing that you ever been through, so sit back, relax, and enjoy the pumpamentals. If you like what you hear by now, think twice. Just remember, yo, this ain't financial advice. Call it a scam, nobody really cares. We can tell you the only one that ain't prepared. Oh yes, I'ma be a millionaire. 5, a couple trillion shares. Oh no, I ain't getting wrecked again. Richard Hart, he got us set to win. We're a family, we all the best of friends. We ain't a cult, man, just call us Mexicans.
What a great song. You know, what a great year. I mean, it's been incredible. Welcome back, Dipcatcher Radio. Today, we're just going to be reflecting a little bit on just an amazing year we've had in HEX. It's truly been something else. You know, looking back, I mean, we knew about HEX. Starting, it's pretty funny when I think about the trajectory with HEX. I first heard about it just from Richard Hart's videos back when it was called. What was it? His thing was CFD token. Back when I think it was even going back to like 18. Oh wow, this site's still up. Let's see if it's blockchain enhanced distributed computational fluid dynamics supercomputing network. Oh my gosh, I never saw the site. Oh my gosh, who remembers this? You know, this was back in 2017. Richard Hart, he was talking about wanting to launch a token, and what the idea apparently was some type of crypto coin where the mining, rather than just being proof of work like in Bitcoin, therefore the transactions that you're putting forth to the blockchain must be legitimate, or else why would you waste that energy? That was, it was meant to be an alternative to that type of proof of work system where the crypto miners would be running, computational fluid dynamics modeling software. Interesting concept. I was into it just because I was always compelled by Richard Hart, and I always figured that he could produce something. I wasn't sure, and this was also back in the heyday, 2017, 2018, when like the wackier the token description was, the more money that would go into it. So I think that, part of it was just like marketing. Part of it was, trying to do something because, his interview with this guy, there was, seemed to be something going on there. But that was when I first really started following Richard Hart's journey to launch a coin, and I really have a lot of respect for people that follow through on projects, and that's what I really respect Richard Hart for. He'd been talking about launching a coin, and he actually pulled it off, and it started with this, but then what I really appreciate was he wasn't he was humble enough to when he realized that this concept wasn't going to work or that it'd be too difficult to pull off, that he decided to change course. So from what I understand, this was the original idea, and then they were thinking about launching something that was kind of like Bitcoin wrapped on Ethereum, but then ultimately it turned into HEX, and that's what we have here today. It's pretty funny looking back on when it was started. Richard was trying to launch it in early 2019, and so everyone it launched with a free claim with Bitcoin, where if you had Bitcoin you could write a signature from your Bitcoin private key, and it would enable you to free claim your coins. And it was apparently 5 weeks away for literally a year. And what ended up happening actually was, a lot of people bought into Bitcoin in preparation for the HEX launch, but it just was delayed for so long, because they're getting audits, they're trying to make it better, trying to make sure it worked. It's looking back like thank God they did that, because as we talked about in the last video, with all these like new DeFi products coming out that are it's literally every week there's a new exit scam or some exploit or whatever. But when HEX was getting ready to launch, everyone was buying Bitcoin so they could do their free claim, and it just so happened that was like the generational bottom of Bitcoin. People were buying, people who were buying Bitcoin to claim HEX, they were buying at like $3,000, $4,000. So people that have been into HEX from the very early days, they've been winning since then. Buying the Bitcoin in early 2019 to prepare for the HEX launch. Riding that move from 3K to 14K. And then when HEX launched in November, end of November, it was actually December 3rd, 2019. It all really just came together, and it was really beautiful to watch. As like an entrepreneur and like startup guy, like I really have a lot of respect for people that like produce product, and hats off to Richard Hart for actually getting it done. And from there, I knew something was special, because everyone talks about launching coins. I've even tried to launch a coin, never really got that far. But I really, really look up to Richard for what he was able to do. He had an idea, worked through the challenges, and got it done. And so even just leading up to the launch of HEX, it's pretty interesting story. And then so for the people that weren't here, so the way that HEX launched, there was 351 days of these auctions. Every day there would be a set amount of Ethereum up for auction, or a set amount of HEX up for auction, and based on how much Ethereum was sent into the contract, you got a certain amount of HEX. So on the first day, the price was so high because everybody FOMOed in. There are a couple of reasons why. One was that people were FOMOing into HEX because they, people had been waiting on it for so long. It was 5 weeks away for like 10 months. And so, people were just FOMOing in, ready to buy. Also, from the first day to the second day, the amount of HEX available for sale, it cut in half. So I think, this is something where I think I went wrong. I was like, oh wow, like the first halvening starts on day one. Like that's exciting. But then, and also I just didn't know as much about it as I did now. I didn't read into the contract as much as I probably should have. I was expecting this to be cutting down more dramatically. I thought it would be like 1 billion hex, 500 million, 400 million. Like I thought it was going to dwindle down, but the way that this number was calculated, it was a function of the number of claimed coins, and most of the coins got claimed in the first couple days, but then, so over time, like this number just dwindled very slowly. So it stayed above 500 million hex throughout the whole duration of the launch phase. So every day, about 500 million hex plus the referral bonuses, plus the the copy the bonus paid to the OA. All that was like new supply coming online. So on this first day, like I thought that the daily inflation was going to cut dramatically. So I was buying in on that first day, but then turns out it didn't. Not a big deal because the people that got in on this first day. This is like probably the most important part of HEX is this concept of the share rate. On this first day of, let's see, how can we get there? Here we go. On day one, there's actually day three, the first day of staking, day three. The share rate was, like in these first couple days, the share rate was so low. Let's see, which column share rate? Let's see. Well, okay, so every day, like, the share rate increases. That's how the compound interest works. It's what ensures that a single 15-year stake will always out-earn 15 one-year stakes, is this concept of the share rate, which there's some other people that have some really awesome content about share rate, but just, you don't really need to understand how it works till you really need to get into it, but it's just what enforces the compound interest. So stakes starting on day three, 15-year stake, the max length, 5 days. There was never a better day to start a max length stake than day three. And so that was one benefit of being able to get in on that first day, was that, you're earning the max length stake interest every single day for the first 5,555 days. And that's before people, other people are in there to dilute the share pool. The amount of interest earned per hex would never be lower. That was the best day possible to ever start a max length stake. And so, there were some benefits, but there was some pretty serious FOMO in that first day of the launch. And then, so early on, like really the only place to buy it was through these auctions, and also on BuyDesk. I never actually bought on BuyDesk because I was always too afraid to send Bitcoin to it. I thought they were just going to swipe it. So, a lot of people were able to dollar cost average in on these. Some days, let's see if we can look at what was the best day to ever buy in the adoption amplifier. Okay, so what are we looking for? We're looking for a small amount of Ethereum. So what's the smallest? You see 497, 350, you see some threes, 277, was that the lowest day? 277, 282. Yeah, so looks like these days right here. So where did this go? 287, am I blind? Okay, 282 and 277. So day 33 and day 43 were the best days ever to buy HEX. But there was like this whole stretch of time where you could get over a million HEX per ETH. And that's pretty good, like right now, let's see, let's take a look at what one ETH would get you. So here we can just take a look at the HEX ETH chart on V2. And so amidst like a big sell-off, which we'll talk about here in a little bit, so 1 over 0.12312667. So right now, 1 ETH will get you 149,000 HEX, compared to this whole stretch of time where 1 ETH could get you 1 million HEX. So, that is pretty incredible. There's these awesome opportunities to buy to buy HEX during this adoption amplifier. But that's actually not entirely accurate, because there's this concept of the referral, where you could self refer yourself and gain an extra like 22% I forget exactly what the number is, but you could self refer yourself and get 22% more. And so you can actually get quite a bit of HEX, for not very much ETH, there in those first couple days. And so let's, this type of launch auction process, it was modeled after EOS. EOS, I believe, was the highest, was the coin that raised the most money. I think the wealthiest people in crypto were the people that went from getting early into Bitcoin, selling their Bitcoin for Ethereum at the ICO, riding that, and then selling their Ethereum for EOS, which pumped like crazy. So EOS had a very successful launch. It didn't really pan out. EOS was meant to be a competitor to Ethereum, and with these smart contract networks, the network effects are really important. And Ethereum is just really kind of won out, where like all the financial innovation is happening on Ethereum. And so things that launch on EOS, they just don't really take off. And so EOS hasn't really performed as well, but their launch was really successful in terms of amount of economic energy that went into the project. And so, HEX is very different from EOS, but they modeled this, this launch auction process after it, which turns out was very successful. The reasons why I think that the launch auction was a very good way of launching was that it didn't create these like tiers of like pre-sale investors. If you look back at one of my old videos when we talked about my experience with Simple Token, which was an ICO that launched in 2017, which funded the startup that I was working on. The problem with that and a whole lot of these other ICOs and other token launches is that they raise money before the product is built, and they, in exchange for that money, they offer these like different tiers, like where there are these like pre-sales and the pre-sales and like, the angel round. And so there's all these groups of people that they're getting in at artificially low prices. And what the situation that creates is that the price isn't very accurate, because the price isn't set, in a fluid market. The price is arbitrarily set. And so with those, what that can lead to is, just like, the price isn't accurate, like it's artificially low. And so that just like puts it off on the wrong course, because those people that got in an artificially low price, say like, in people's heads, like they want to exit, like, they want to have like a 10x exit, like they're a VC, they're funding these early coins, they got to return money to their investors, they got to exit, they got to get like a 10x or whatever their number is. And if they're starting artificially low, the price that they're willing to sell is going to be lower too. So having like a lot of these, pre-sale investors where, they put forth money, but they put it in at an artificially low rate, that can lead to a lot of selling pressure. And so that's something that you see a lot in some of these ICOs that raise a lot of money before they even launch. It's just like you have this like whole class of investors that got in before the public could get in, and they're just ready to dump on the heads of everybody. I think the way that HEX launched, where it was like, 351 days of auctions, where the product was fully complete before any money changed hands, before any Ethereum was transformed into HEX through these auctions. The like HEX was fully complete. It's not a project; it's a product. Those two aspects of it, I think, really helped with the success of the launch. That doesn't mean that there weren't going to be ups and downs, because when we look at the chart, let's look at the all-time chart. When you just look at when Uniswap V2 came out, that's what it looks like. But even in HEX, there was like 1, 2, 3, 4, and now we're in our fifth, major bear market in HEX. HEX has been very volatile, but part of that is because the price is being set at the market, and there wasn't like a class of early investors that got in at some artificially low price, ready to sell the price down. And so that's really helped the momentum of HEX, is that like, the price has been set at the market, and then, um, you know, it started trading on Uniswap, just like a week after. I can't remember when I first started buying on Uniswap. I moved away from the AA because, we're dip catchers here, and with these daily auctions, it was better to do the auction if you had a lot of money. Like if you were worried about slippage, the adoption amplifier was probably better for you, and you could get the self referral bonus, to get additional. But what I liked about the AA was that, like, because there's so much day to day volatility, sometimes you get in at a very low price. So some days you could get in at a better price in the AA than on Uniswap. Other days you could get in at a better price the other way around. So, I like Uniswap, and but people that bought either way, they had a really good time. So overall, like, if I had to rate like this, the success of just like the launch, like how the coins were initially distributed. I think that this, like, 351 days of daily auctions was, that's like a big catalyst to the success of HEX, because it enabled the price to be set in a really organic way over 351 data points. It wasn't like, like for instance with the Simple Token ICO, they had, all the couple rounds of pre-sales to all these different VCs, and then they had the public launch where they just set the price. I remember it was 8.3333 cents, like just arbitrarily. Like they just said, we're raising this amount of money at this rate, and then the market bought it, and then OST pumped. But then, what's good about the way that HEX launched compared to like with my experience with OST was that, like, because HEX was complete, there weren't developers. There wasn't like a whole team of like developers and business development people and like marketing people and design people that that HEX had to pay. Like HEX was complete. It was privately financed, probably by Richard, probably by whoever owns the OA, but it was complete before launch. Like there wasn't like a big group of employees that the coin needs to subsidize now, and that was the problem. With like a lot of ICOs was that they had to hire people. They raised money. Usually the founders ran off with took off with the ETH, and then from like the founder allocation of the token, they would pay a lot of the employees. So I'm not sure exactly how the OST people were funded, but and they had VC backing, which helped, but like with employees getting paid in the token, that's just constant sell pressure. Like for me with OST, like I was like one of their developer partners. So I wasn't part of OST, but I was kind of adjacent to them, and getting paid in their token, and that's just constant sell pressure. So not having the overhead of like ongoing development, really freed up, like it alleviated a source of sell pressure that is common in a lot of these other coins. And that's purely because it was fully complete before it was launched. And I think that that's like what the market expects now. I think in 2017 the market had different expectations. The market was fine with these pie in the sky ideas that were going to get funded. People were making so much money, they were just like throwing it around. But now I think the market's a little bit more sensitive, and that's another reason why HEX I think was so successful, is because like it wasn't like they were promising that some development was going to happen and that they were going to like launch something. Like they just built it and it worked. And so as far as like the launch, that's another thing that I really really proud of what Richard Hart was able to do, and all the other people involved. There were other developers that you see in the chat, and even some developers that no one knows who they were. Like I don't think anyone really knows who built some of this stuff. And that's that their right to stay private. Like they don't owe anybody anything. So I think that the way they built the complete product, fully got it audited, and it just fully worked. Like hats off to Richard for leading the team that got that done. That's a really astounding feat. Like when you see all these other DeFi products that are just getting hacked, getting rug pulled, whatever, like that was really amazing to see that like every day, despite like, like the crazy price, massive moves up, massive sell-offs, massive move up, sell-off, like, we had a lot of volatility, but every day HEX operated as it should. This staking, which is really the thing that matters, like it just worked. And so, that I think was another big catalyst to the success, was just like there was no development overhead, like all the work was done, and they took the time to do it right. Everyone was like, "Oh, when is HEX gonna launch?" Like, I was like ready for HEX to launch like way early in 2019. But had to wait, and you know what? I'm glad they waited, and also the timing was great too, because back in let's take a look at the Bitcoin chart. Let's take a look at Bitcoin. Like say like a big part of the success of coin launches, it just has to do with the general market timing. And when HEX, like if HEX would have launched when everyone thought it would have, that was when Bitcoin was around. Let's see, my internet's so slow. I hope my stream's going well. Let's see. Okay, so say HEX launched when when it was supposed to, like early 2019. Bitcoin is really low, so at that time, like there wasn't very much like people are very bearish. When Bitcoin's bearish, the market's bearish. So maybe there wouldn't have been so much people like looking for things to get into. But by the time that HEX actually launched, it was around December of 2019. Bitcoin had gone through this full, here, let's zoom in a little bit. Bitcoin had gone through this full like boom and bust cycle from 3K to 14K down to about like I think 6K, and then I think when let's take a look once it loads. But let's see, zoom out a little bit. So, Bitcoin had just gone through, like it had already gone through like a massive market cycle. And usually when that happens, usually like when Bitcoin runs and then it settles down and then it starts moving sideways, which is kind of what's happening here. So like, it had this massive move from, 3K to 13K, and then big sell, 6-month bear market. This is when HEX launched, December 3rd. So right here. And so during this time, like when Bitcoin moves like that, like this full push, exhaustion, consolidation cycle, when it's in a consolidation and it's not really moving, people start looking for yield in other places, and so people are willing to take more risk on other coins. And so I think that this time period, that really, like, because Bitcoin wasn't reaching back to its all-time high, like during this whole time from from when it launched December up through May, like because Bitcoin moved like this, also with COVID going on, like that was like the perfect time for something new to launch, because Bitcoin wasn't running, so people weren't FOMOing into that. Bitcoin had already kind of gone through this like push exhaustion cycle, so people were tired, people were looking for returns in other areas, and I think that that's a big reason for the success of HEX is just the timing in the launch. Had HEX launched way back here, maybe in the first, say it launched like here, like a year before. I think it was meant to launch like the prior year. Bitcoin had just ended like a massive, like, year-long, just a massive bear market, just going down, 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 down. And, so a lot of people just really didn't have a lot to invest. People were scared. People thought there were people calling for Bitcoin to 1,200. And then Bitcoin started moving, here in, from April to July. Like if this was happening, like, at this time when, like down here, people thought Bitcoin was dead, and then it had this like massive like 4x move. If this had been going on when HEX was launching, that would have sucked a lot of the air out of HEX. Like a lot of the capital that could have flowed into HEX, might not have, because Bitcoin, because it's been around for so long and because a lot of the risk has already been alleviated, maybe people would have been investing more in that. But because like that had already cooled off by the time that HEX had launched over here, I think the timing of it was just perfect. So if I had to rate the timing of the HEX launch, you really can't get better than that. And then especially with all the craziness from COVID, like when COVID was going on, so look at what happened to Bitcoin. You know, went from, I think, okay, let's see. So it was coronavirus. We started hearing about coronavirus in December. And then February it started to convert to COVID. That was when they rebranded to COVID-19. And then March, shutdowns, like boom, massive sell across all markets. So March of 2020, let's take a look at the HEX price in March. So during that time, like HEX had already, had its, because HEX, the price when it launched, it started around here, came down, had its bottom right around New Year, then had another, push to the upside. I think, what is that, like a quick 8x right there, if my math's right. And then, it had like, another big sell-off, just that push exhaustion cycle we always talk about on this channel. And then, when lockdown started, HEX started pumping. So right here, that week, 33%, 46%. So like, while the rest of the world is in shambles, everyone thought that, all the markets were dead, we're going to enter a great depression. HEX was just pumping along. There's some things, like a single whale pumped the price 100% in a day. Like a lot of this move right here in April, that was like a single person, just like a massive whale. These coins were linked back to the launch of Ethereum. That really catalyzed it. But like, since HEX was like truly decorrelated from the rest of the markets, because it's like this obscure coin, fighting through a lot of FUD, like the crypto mainstream hated it. It's like fully separate, like it's fully like in its own little bubble. And like, that I think was also like a true blessing, was that like, it kind of came out of obscurity. So it wasn't like coupled to these other markets. So when there's like this massive sell-off, HEX was pumping during that. And so that like, just, because HEX was kind of in its own world while the rest of the markets were tumbling, that enabled it to like make up, like, between, March through May, like that, like helped like HEX like get like this foot up, which it's like, and it's still in this range today. Like, maybe if, the timing was just different, maybe HEX wouldn't have made this like big move up, like let's measure that, like just if the timing was different, from when like COVID really struck, maybe HEX wouldn't have had this, 2,000% move. And then, now we're up in this range. And so, just like the timing, like, that is really amazing. That's something no one could plan. That's, Richard Hart did, some amazing things. Like, he did not plan this. But, just because the timing of these things work, and, like, no one can predict it. And, what do they say luck is? It's like when, when opportunity meets preparation, people who are ready to be, had their MetaMask set up, they knew how to execute a smart contract. They knew about HEX, like, all the people down here, like, these are the ones that were like ready to take action, and they were the ones that were able to seize that opportunity, because no one could predict that like there would be this massive move to the upside, where people are buying these coins and staking for 10 years, staking for 15 years, and so, timing plays a really big effect, and and it couldn't have worked out better for HEX. And also, so, timing was incredible, but also I think that one thing that, a lot of people in the Hexican community, get really upset about is, all the gatekeeping and all the hatred from the crypto mainstream, like the Ethereum DeFi crowd, like they should love HEX. Like HEX does everything that they wish they could do, but they hate it. Like, they slander Richard. They call, I remember back here, they were calling everyone bots. Like all these people, all the Hexicans, they're calling us bots. And, there's just a lot of hatred, and I think there are two reasons for that. One was because, like one reason for a lot of the hatred was that there was, like Hex does what these other coins wish they could do. Like Hex has staking, Hex has yield production. All these other DeFi things, like that's what they want. Like that's like everyone's trying to do that. But Hex really did it first, and they did it the best. And through that, you know, like Hex really kicked off this like DeFi wave. Like when you look at the bull cycle that was going on over the summer, like while Hex was cooling off, like Hex reached its all-time high in May, and then we had like a 2 month, not 2 month, May, June, July, August, September, like a 4 month bear market in Hex. Like during this time, all these other DeFi coins were pumping. Like it was true heyday, and we covered a lot of that in the channel. We were looking at all these other ones, seeing things like come and go and like all the craziness. Like we definitely participated in that, and it was a lot of fun. But like Hex really like enabled that. Like Hex really kicked off Uniswap, made it popular, and the while Hex was kind of resting here, all these other things started to take off, and like Hex enabled that. And so all these people that had all this hatred because like they're jealous because they couldn't produce what Hex produced, they benefited from Hex. Yet like the gatekeeping and the hatred still continued. But I really believe, and I still believe this to today. Like we definitely get on Twitter and we beat the drum, and we definitely like when people make misinformed comments, we're there to correct it. But like I think that all the hatred and all the gatekeeping has truly been a blessing in disguise. Like for the people that really get it, like we've had such awesome returns because there weren't people there to front run us. Like there weren't like way back here, we didn't have to compete with other people for those coins because like the crypto mainstream, they hated it, and they did their best to gatekeep. They slandered Richard, said it was had every single name in the book for calling Hex a Ponzi, calling it a scam, calling it a pyramid, like all these things that were just like blatantly false. Like if anyone who's read the contract, anyone who's actually done Hex, participated in Hex, like it's so clear that there's no funny business going on. It's the most transparent coin in crypto. Like between with all the the data sites that we have, like built by the community, like no one's getting paid to do this stuff. The like everyone who's done Hex and participated in the smart contract, like they know, but like the people who've never done it, like they just haven't, because they didn't invent it. They think there must be some funny business going on. And so I think that was a big benefit actually. Like it kind of sucked, and I think it takes a lot of strength, like on Richard's part to just like take all that hatred, take all the name calling, because it's all being cast upon him. Like those people, they're bearing false witness against him, not against anybody else. But that like what that means is like those people they're mismeasuring risk. Like they think that like the centralization of the supply is a risk, so they're mismeasuring that. Hexagons, like we view that as an asset. Like people that aren't in Hex view the supply concentration as a liability. And so those people that just had just nothing but hatred for Hex, like that helped keep the price low, so people that did believe could get in at a good price. And like all the people that don't have Hex yet, that's just potential energy for Hex to move up in the future. And so I really welcome all the hatred, because people who are mismeasuring that risk, like they're the ones that are going to be buying at a premium later on. And so all the hatred, all the jealousy, that's it's like a blessing in disguise. And that I think has led to a lot of the success that we've had in Hex. And also so the Ethereum people, they hated it because like they didn't build it, and it's wildly successful. And so that's more like on jealousy. Like Hex doesn't necessarily, Hex isn't a smart contract platform. Hex isn't a lending protocol. Like all these other things that like these other, like the like the ETH mainstream, like all the people that .ETH in their Twitter name, they hate Hex because they didn't build it. And those people that like these like crypto insiders, like that typically expect to have like an insider out, like the people that are in the pre-sales, the people that are like funding these things, like Hex didn't raise money from any of them. So like these people that typically have like an inside advantage, they didn't have that in HEX. And so, those people felt left out. And so, they took it out on the HEX community, and, with slander, libel, bearing false witness. And, that's because, because, there's, these people that just expect to be the ones that are like in that pre-sale round and where they get the quick 10x markup. They were left out. And so, no wonder why they had so much awful things to say. So the Ethereum people, they hated it for one reason. The Bitcoin people, who actually got it for free, like a core part of the HEX launch was this Bitcoin free claim. It's over now, but like, if you had Bitcoin on, what was it, like December 1st, I forgot what day the free claim snapshot was, but everyone with Bitcoin could have claimed HEX for free. That was a marketing technique, just, because, you want people with money to be able to buy your coin. So you give some to them for free so they can try it out and experiment, and then, then maybe they might move some of their Bitcoin into HEX. Bitcoin people usually like, I take that back. Bitcoin people hate everything that's not Bitcoin. Like, they've really got their head in the sand. Part of that, that is a strength to Bitcoin. But like, with this, they just had so much hatred. And I think the reason why is because of everything that's ever tried to compete with Bitcoin. HEX is the most direct competitor for that long-term savings use case. In HEX, like, the keystone, feature of HEX is that max length stake, that 5,555 day stake. That is a long time. That's longer than Bitcoin's been around. And so, like, from the very first day, people were agreeing to lock up their HEX for 15 years. Nobody has ever agreed to lock up their Bitcoin for 15 years. Nobody has even held their Bitcoin for 15 years because, they haven't had the chance yet. They like, it hasn't been around for 15 years. And so just right off the bat, like, HEX comes in and it's a true competitor for that long-term savings use case. And that long-term savings use case, that's the most sustainable pumpamental that could exist in a cryptocurrency. Like, for instance, Ethereum pumps and then it dumps because Ethereum goes up in price when there's a lot of fundraising activity and when there's a lot of business activity that's going on that requires people to buy ETH. So when HEX was launching, a lot of people were buying ETH so they could buy HEX, and so that helped push the price up. When there was ICO, euphoria and craze, a lot of ETH was being purchased, to buy into these coins. But then as, like, the founders of those ICOs start selling the ETH, then, and like the air kind of gets sucked out of the room from these crazy ICOs where no one's really willing to take that risk anymore. That's when the price really dumps. And so that's like what you see when you look at let's pull up the Ethereum chart measured against Bitcoin. So you can kind of see that here on the chart. Let's just loads. Okay, so here's the Ethereum chart. Let's see how far back this goes. Let's just go to the monthly chart. So Ethereum, kind of goes through these cycles when, like, this was like peak fundraising hysteria. So, like, all this ETH is getting bought up, part just because, crypto during that time, everything was pumping. And then, like, when these coins that were raising ETH to launch, like Simple Token, they were like, they're buying up all this ETH. And then once the creators of those projects get the ETH and they start selling it off, then, there's like, big, 2-year, 3-year bear market in ETH. And then really, HEX kind of kicked this back off. Like, HEX invented DeFi. HEX was the, other than Uniswap, like, HEX was like the first DeFi product. Like, HEX, like, there were ways that you could, like, earn yield from lending, but, like, HEX really kicked off this DeFi revolution. Like, you can see right here, like, HEX launched early December 2019. That was the bottom of ETH. A lot of ETH was being bought to buy HEX. And, and then HEX brought a lot of liquidity and a lot of attention to Uniswap, and then Uniswap proved to be a really valuable utility for these other DeFi protocols. And so some people say like HEX is like the godfather. I'd say HEX invented DeFi. And for what it's worth, HEX invented Uniswap. No one was using Uniswap. The only use case of Uniswap before then was like socks, which I love because that I love socks. I love the airdrop that socks came with. That we haven't even got to that point yet. But HEX really kicked off this whole wave, and despite being the leader in the space, the one that made it happen, just so much hatred. But that's because you'd probably hate HEX too if you were working real hard to try to bring about this DeFi thing, and then this guy, some fat and old guy, in his words, fat and old guy, rabid community around him that built up just because he years of building rapport, just giving value, just giving advice, writing books, making helpful videos, being in chat every day talking to people, just years and years of building rapport and building relationships with people. This guy who wears a top hat and talks crazy. He comes out and then launches something if you were some other DeFi developer, you'd probably hate him too. And so, I think maybe one day people will look back and have the same level of respect for what HEX did for really kicking off this DeFi wave. But that remains to be seen. But that's just an example of how when there's fundraising activity in ETH, it goes through these pump and dump cycles. The funds get raised, the price goes up, the funds get spent, price goes down. And so we'll probably continue to see that, but with what were we even talking about? I got so into that, but yeah. So HEX really kicked off this whole DeFi wave, and so what I was saying was that the Bitcoin people have hatred for HEX because it competes for that long-term savings use case. HEX, ETH, it goes through these market cycles because people buy at one point and then sell. Some people maybe they're long-term investors in ETH, but no one's really saving in ETH. You don't think about ETH as savings. You think about ETH as investing. Very different use case. Bitcoin, you think about Bitcoin as saving. And so, whereas other competitors to Bitcoin, ETH was smart contract and finance rails, not really competitor to savings use case. Bcash, these other forks of Bitcoin, those were more for currency use case. They're going for higher transaction throughput. That's those are competing on the currency aspects. They're not really competing on the savings aspect of it. And so that up until HEX, there's really nothing I can even recall has been considered a long-term savings coin. And then here comes HEX. From obscurity, and first day people are staking HEX for 15 years. And so that I think really kind of Bitcoin people who already hate anything else, when they see something come on that competes for that use case that nothing else had competed with it for, I think that's why the Bitcoiners had so much hate and slander to throw towards the Hexagons. But you know what, like I said earlier, that is mispriced risk. They did not properly measure the risk, and they pay the people who did accurately measure that risk. People who were buying HEX down here, they were bearing this risk when no one else would. And that's why the price was so low. Price is an inverse correlation of risk. When price is low, high risk, because it's so much closer to zero, it could go to zero. It's something so new, something so obscure, a lot of FUD, a lot of misinformation, a lot of misunderstanding, and so the risk was high. And people that had just had hatred for it out of jealousy or just out of because it was competitive to the thing that they had a big bag of, their risk was mismeasured because of personal and emotional reasons. So that's even more it just amplifies how improperly their risk assessment was done. And that's what enabled Hexagons to get into this really low prices, with just people were scared, and these people were willing to take that risk when no one else would, and that's what the market pays them for, with 6,000% gains. So as far as the hatred goes, I welcome it. There's you got to have someone on the wrong side of the trade, because if everyone loved it already, then there would be no more upside left. And so, it's tough to go through, and you wish that people would see these things the way that you do, but everyone's got their own thing going on. Everyone has their own perspective, and you should welcome people misallocating their funds and mismeasuring this risk, because if you accurately measure that risk, like, that's your gain, and that gain comes at their expense. And so all the slander, I think the Hexans kind of fully started embracing it, and that's really all you can do, because it really helps us, and when you really think about it. So what else? I mean, so we kind of talked about the claim, talked about the referral and the transforms. The staking was amazing. That's probably been the most engaging part of HEX. Was really just watching these stakes unfold. So Firebun made this really awesome site, hex.vision. We embed it here on the hex.cash site. It's there, but if you want to go to hex.vision. And this has really been awesome to see how these stakes are unfolding. So here we are today. Where are we? Okay, let's see. Let's zoom in a little bit. So these are the stakes, like all the stakes that are expiring. So what we're looking at here is that, like, right here after big payday, there's a lot going on. Let's just zoom into like these right here. Okay, so when big payday happened, what was going on before then was, like, we had this massive pump where we hit all-time highs, 1.5 cents. Part of that was because when people were here looking at when people were on the go.hex site looking at how much, okay, we can't say here because I don't have stakes on this wallet. When they were looking at their big payday, this was showing such a massive number, like a massive multiple, because the stake rate was pretty low. Stake rate had always hung around pretty low, partially because, the, like, supply concentration, like some of the massive players weren't some of the biggest wallets weren't staking. And also another reason why, the stake rate was really high early on in HEX, but once HEX had this massive move to the upside, a lot of people were keeping HEX liquid, because from their assessment, if you can bag like 1,000x or 1,000% ROI on a trade, that's like the equivalent to like a max length stake, or no, I mean, it's not max length stake. Will earn more of that. That's maybe equivalent to like a 6-year stake, whatever it is. Like, you'd have to look at the share rate and all that, but like, because there was so much volatility, it made HEX a really good coin to trade. And so while HEX was really designed for stakers, just like this massive move to the upside, and then this like volatility that was going on, most people were keeping their HEX liquid. And so since most of the HEX was liquid, and the big payday, which was all the unclaimed coins that could have gone to Bitcoin holders, but those people didn't claim their coins, those were getting paid to all the stakers. It appeared that the big payday bonus was going to be massive. And so leading up to this, like right at the end of October, there was just like so much new buying hype, because a lot of people were buying HEX with the intention of doing a quick little stake, because when they would type in how much they would earn on this page, like, say, they're like, okay, I'm gonna stake 1,000,000 HEX for 10 days, whatever. Okay, this isn't gonna show it, but like right here, it would show what their big payday bonus would be, and it was probably showing something like 3 to 4x. So a lot of people were trying to treat this like just a quick flip, and then what ended up happening, and this was truly amazing to watch. A big fear that people had in HEX, and like a risk of like the supply concentration in HEX, was like, okay, what happens if the OA or any of the addresses linked to the OA dump their coins? Like, that's like the big fear. Like, people are like terrified that the OA is going to dump the coins. But what ended up happening here is that there were a lot of these opportunistic traders trying to get in quickly to the big payday. And what ended up happening was they bought in thinking they were getting a big payday, like a real quick payout, like quick, double, triple, quadruple their stack. And then the OA and all these addresses linked to the OA in this like valiant move. Like, let's see if we can find that. Where can we find it? Okay, let's take a look at this. We're gonna look for hex stakes that are greater than probably like 50 million. And those were done between so what's the date? So October, November. So Big Payday was the 19th. I think it started unfolding like early last week. So let's just take a look at this. So from like November 1st to like November 30th. So let's just look at that. And we'll look at 50 million. That's 50,000. Let's do 50 million. So let's take a look at this. It's truly incredible to watch. Okay, actually we need to go into the other one because we're not going to be looking at open stakes. We're going to look at alt stakes. I think some of these stakes are starting to close. But what we saw was like the number of hex staked went from like whatever it was, like 15% all the way to like 99%. And a lot of that was in these massive chunks that were linked to the OA. There's a guy named Silver the Antidote, which you should take a look at. Silver the Antidote, he does a lot of the chain analysis on the OA. And let's see, where can we find? I think, yeah, okay. So here we're looking at stakes. We're looking for where hex staked is greater than 50, 123, done between November 30th and now. 50 million. Oh, November 30th. We're looking at October 30th. Okay, let's see. Yeah, so once this loads, we'll see all these. Okay, they're 2, 1, 5, 6. Let's take a look at this in the. Let's go ahead and look at the hex staked. And we're going to visualize that. Okay, the x-axis, we don't want that. We want that to be some type of date histogram. Where the field is start. Yep. We don't want to do per week. We want to do. Okay, what's a better way to look at this? Here, we'll just go back to. We'll go back to this, and we'll just look at the table. We won't pull up the chart. We'll have to spend a little more time on that. Yeah, come on. Okay, here we go. So if we just look at the, what do we want to look at? We want to look at the hex staked and the end, and we want to look at expected end and like the stake address. Okay. So you've seen all these. Okay, let's see how many there are. It will tell us. Okay, they're over 5. So there are these massive stakes, like short-term, like little stakes. And what happened was, what that was is it was the OA. So that the entity who gets a copy of the bonuses gets half of the early end stake penalties. The OA is in the contract. People are the haters are like, oh, the OA is going to dump on you. The OA is going to kill their project. But what happened here was the OA actually protected the long-term stakers from short-term stakers trying to get a lot of this bonus. Because all the unclaimed coins were getting distributed by shares. A lot of people with really short-term stakes were, thinking they were going to get a whole lot of it. And so the OA actually stepped in and entered hundreds of these like massive short-term stakes. And what that did was it squeezed out all of the people who were just like trying to quick flip big payday. So what's interesting about that is that the fear that people had was that the OA was going to somehow like crush the project. But what it did was it actually defended the long-term stakers, because the long-term stakers, like, they did great on big payday. It wasn't as big as what the estimates on the go.hex.com dashboard were showing earlier, but the total hex supply was increasing by about 30% on that day. But the people with long-term stakes, 100%, 200% of the amount of hex that they had. So everyone's hex doubled, and then the price, the price went down a little bit, but the amount that the long-term stakers increased was less than what the price had, or it was greater than what the price had decreased over this period of time. And so what we see here was all these people trying to buying up all the hex. I mean, some people were buying to do long-term stakes. Other people were buying to do a quick flip on big payday. So right here, as it started to become clear that the OA was going to, and the addresses linked to the OA were going to protect the long-term stakers, and then the short-term stakers saw the amount of hex that they thought they were going to get start dwindling. We saw a lot of emergency end stakes. We saw a lot of people selling, a lot of people that were going to stake and decided not to because they weren't going to get what they thought they were. And then then when big payday happened, all these people that thought they were going to sell, for a quick 2x or 3x flip, they just sold off because they were going to cut their losses. A lot of these people had bought up here, above a penny. And then when it became clear that, the OA was going to squeeze them out, they just started selling off, right as soon as the big payday, coins became unlocked. And so from when big payday happened, the price went down, say 40%. Everyone's, all the long-term stakers more than doubled their hex. So long-term stakers right now on paper are up. Short-term stakers got wrecked, and so that's what this big sell-off was right here. Was a combination of two things. One was all those short-term opportunistic traders just trying to cut their losses because their original plan wasn't going to work. And then two, what's happening is so much of the supply came back online because there were so many stakes that became unlocked during this time. Plus the big paydays on all those. So the circulating supply increased by a lot during this period of time. And so that led to a big sell-off, and then there's this big wick down where big sell-off, people bought it back up, and every day for over the next couple months, when we go back to hex.vision right here, and we look at the stakes expiring, let's see where we can find that. So still over the next couple months, there's a lot of hex expiring. So what we'll probably see, truly probably for the next year, this can represent a lot of downwards pressure on the price. So maybe over this next year, if you couldn't get into hex at these very, very low prices, way back when hex was super, super cheap, and even down in these dips down here, if you couldn't get into hex way down here, you didn't know about it, you gave into FUD, you listened to these crypto influencers who thought they knew what was going on. We are going to see, a lot of supply coming online. And, a lot of these people have massive gains because a lot of these people, bought in early, staked, and now it's coming unlocked. They're up 10, 20, 30x. And, that's a good time to take profit. And so, there could be, continued sell pressure throughout this time. And that's a blessing for, people with long-term stakes. Doesn't impact them at all. They do not care because by the time their coins become liquid, all this sell pressure would have been alleviated. And so, what we're, we may see some, pretty big sell off, over the next couple of months. Price can certainly pump because like what's counteracting this, like, this big amount of supply coming online, it's just kind of like an extension of these daily auctions, where every day like 500 million new HEX was coming into the supply. Every day is different, but that's kind of what's going on here. And so, this it's kind of like an extension of that, where, like we don't have these coins coming online, we don't have these auction coins coming online, but a lot of these stakes are coming online. So, there still is a significant amount of like circulating supply increase going on. But what happens, as it starts to settle down, is that the daily inflation, like it's like from what it is now, or what it was during the launch phase, where there's 500 million over. It was actually like close to like a billion HEX per day coming online. And then it cuts abruptly to like 50 million HEX per day coming online. It's like a tenthening. Like in Bitcoin, they have a halvening every 4 years. In HEX, we kick off the big payday with a tenthening, where the daily supply inflation cuts abruptly by 90%. And so that's what we've got, ahead of us is, a big decrease in the daily circulating supply, like the daily emission rate of new supply. And much like, the Bitcoin halving causes price to pump, I think, while we do have like a lot of these stakes ending, just like the daily inflation, like the daily like new emission, decreasing by 90%, like that could help counteract like the sell pressure from these, because previously when people were trying to be buying large pools of HEX, they were buying through here, so this was absorbing a lot of that buying pressure. But now, that buying pressure is going to be absorbed by these people whose stakes ended. Unless but on the flip side, what could happen is like all these people. Let's try to zoom in here. So like all these people who are ending their stake here, like this is the big question in HEX. This is what I'm going to be monitoring. And maybe this will be the topic of like next week's stream. Maybe we can like write a couple scripts to, try to look at like what is the restake rate. Like that's the number that really matters here. Because a lot of these people who have these stakes ending over the next year. Let's zoom in even more. Like a lot of these. Okay, it's not going to zoom in. Oh well. Like a lot of these people whose stakes are ending, like how many of them restake and how long do they restake? Because like I have some stakes that end like here in the next couple weeks that I had locked in like from the start, and I never emergency end staked to stake longer. Which looking back, I wish I would have to earn more shares, but I left it what it was because maybe there are going to be good sell opportunities, or maybe I just want to restake. Who knows what I want to do with that? But like, the question is like, what is the restake rate, and like how long these people stake? Because a lot of these people, at most they only have like a 1 year stake. And so, are these people going to enter another 1 year stake, or are they going to look at that? They're going to see how much they earned from their 1 year stake, and then look at how much the 15-year stakes have earned by this time, and are they going to think, okay, maybe I need to max link stake, or maybe what at least like what my strategy with my stake ladder is that like over the next 15 years I have a bunch of stakes expiring, but I wish they were all 15-year stakes, because in those last couple of days of the 15-year stakes, you are earning so much interest because your proportion of the share pool is so much higher than everyone else's, because all the other stakes that had started and ended, in the time that you, started your stake till, when it ends, all those people that used to be competing with you for, for the inflation pool, their stakes have ended. Like those shares have been burnt. Those shares are no longer, in the share pool, and all the new shares that took their place came in at a higher share rate. And so, like, having stakes, where like, every couple months, like having some stakes end, where like every couple months, like you're earning more and more, like that's cool. But what's going to be really cool is from your, 2035 to 2050, when every single one of my stakes will have been a max length stake. Because then what that means is that, and if that's a strategy that you apply to, like you will always be in that top percent of interest earners, because, from your 2035 to your 2050, like every single stake that's expiring was a max length stake. Where, even though like the longer pays better caps out, like the however much it increases, like longer pays better caps out at 10 years. But the benefit of staking for 15 years is that you've locked in that share price and you get those extra 5 years of that low share rate. So, having, a staking ladder from 2035 to 2050 that is where every single one that comes out is 15 years, like that can be huge. That can be generational wealth. Like that's like nation building shit. And, we just got to get there. And so, part of that, which, kind of my call to action to, to the Hexagon Nation is, we can't get complacent. Price went up so much because we bought it up. Like we're the ones buying. And if the Hexagons turn to net sellers, you're going to squeeze the golden goose. I saw a tweet. Somebody said that just yesterday they got an awesome high-paying engineering job. And I was so proud of that person because, Hexagons should be, we should try to be the highest earning people outside of crypto. Like we should be earning so much money outside of crypto and bringing it into Hex to fuel the future of our stakes and like our future generation stakes. Like we can't get complacent, just because we got in at a low price, like just because, we were in here, buying, just because we were, bearing this risk when no one else was, we were buying this up, buying these dips. Like if Hexagons turn to net sellers, then, how much is that interest really gonna be worth? And so that's really my call to action to the Hexagons is that, like, we're done with year one. And if we really want to make an impact and we really want to, project our worldview and like assert our values on the world, like, we got to get jobs, get 2 jobs, make more money, bring it into Hex, make so much money that you can afford to max length stake, make so much money that you don't have to spend your Hex. Because if like we really want to, assert our values on the world, and if we really want to outcompete, like, because like what I know about the Hexagons is like there's so much goodness in everyone's heart. It starts with Richard Hart. He has goodness in his heart, and it carries through to everyone in the community. Like the Hexagons are the most generous people. They're the most loving people, accepting people. Like, they love to have a good time. They love to connect with others. They love to share knowledge. Like, if we want to keep, carrying forth like our good values, we need to be the wealthiest people on earth. And we can't rely on just like, noobs to come in and pump our bags. Like we need to pump our own bags. Like we need to be building wealth outside of this so that we don't have to be selling the Hex. So we can, 15-year stake ends, nice, max length stake that, 100% of it, plus the interest. Like that's really how we can, really make an impact on the world. And because like evil people out there, like they're going to be working overtime trying to get that money. They're going to be the ones trying to assert their values on the world. And, the Hexagon Nation is really in a unique position to be able to, be part of like this massive transition. Like this, we're seeing it right now. There's massive global power shift going on. And, crypto is right at the heart of it. And if we get complacent and we start, selling off all of our Hex, we get that interest. We think, we're genius investors and now we got to sell. We may not be able to make the impact that we want. So, I'm really proud of the first year. Like this far exceeded my expectations. Like when I look back at, my first tweet about Hex, I tweeted about it, but when I first recommended it on a tweet, let's take a look. Let's look at my pin tweet. November 19, 2019, a rare addition to cryptocurrencies I endorse is the upcoming HEX crypto and ERC20 certificate of deposit coin. Looking back on that, like, seeing how far we've come now, it's truly been amazing. But this is really just the beginning, this was an incredible first year in HEX. the price was amazing. Like everything just worked. Everyone came together. We had people trying to end us. We had people trying to slander us. We had, fake hexes trying to come in and take market share. Fake hexes trying to scam people, but we persisted. Um, and, now is where it begins. That first year, like that was the launch phase. Now we're really in like phase one. Like this first 15-year phase, where like all the Genesis shares start to expire. Like what happens with the interest earned on those Genesis shares? Do we, do we dump it all, call it quits, race to the door, or do we really turn this into like a global phenomena, that lasts longer than any of us do? And so, I'm really excited to see where this goes. I hope and I fully expect. We've got some great people in the community that I think are going to continue to carry this on. And we really have the only way to go from here is up. And so, it's been such an exciting time. I think HEX really changed a lot of our worldviews. It really like taught us things that we didn't know before. And I think that, it's going to be exciting next 15 years. And it's up to us to, to keep it going, keep it pumping, keep, spreading the word, spreading love. And, that's I think that makes for a really fulfilling life. And so I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up here. Congratulations to everyone for the awesome success that we've had so far. It's really been awesome to see, all the people that have really made this such a fun experience. Every day there's fun. Hexologist, like on his daily stream, like everyone's having fun. Prices dumping, everyone's having fun. Prices pumping, everyone's having a great time. And, that's been a really, really awesome thing to watch. And, I'm excited to see it continue. So thanks for everyone that joined us today. It's pretty late where I'm at, so I'm going to go ahead and sign off. But if you have any questions, just leave them in the comments, and we'll keep the discussion going forward. Until next time, we'll talk to y'all later. Actually, let's see. Oh, nice, people in the chat. What's up, y'all? Hey. All right, nation building shit. Yeah, that's it. All right, thanks everyone for sticking with us. We'll talk to y'all soon.